Welcome to Real Talk with Pam, the show where authenticity meets conversation and where we turn women's lived experiences into shared and learning ones. Today, we're discussing a critical topic: family and domestic violence. I'm honored to have Abolade Bibi Anthony. She's a renowned project manager, she's a social entrepreneur, and the founder of the Dream Bag Foundation. She's a mom to three wonderful kids and a domestic violence survivor. She has agreed to share her story with us in the hopes that she will help people who are still victims become survivors. Let's get started. Bolade, welcome to Real Talk with Pam. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for your courage, first off, because I know today we're going to be talking about family and domestic violence. It's such an important topic. And thank you for your courage, because I know that you have personal experience and you want to share that. So, my very first question would be could you tell me what has been your own personal experience with domestic violence and why do you think it's important to share your story?
Okay, so I think that the journey from victim to survivor gives you a sense of responsibility. And, just cruising through the world in general, I can usually sense who is being abused in their home,
Wow.
just from sitting in a circle of women. And it's been a burden that you have to speak your truth to help other people because you experience it for a reason. God says that He would use everything, He will turn everything together for our good, and everything that we've been through will be used for our good. And so that's the reason I feel it's important to tell my story. Now, I stopped experiencing physical um, violence in 2013, but abuse comes in various forms. So there's mental, verbal, financial, various ways of abusing a person. And so if you feel like you're being restrained from lifting a hand to strike, then you amp up whatever other avenues are available to you. So the first time it happened to me was, I believe, in 2001.
Right.
And, I didn't know what it was. I hadn't, not that I didn't know what it was in that sense, but it had never happened to me before.
Right.
And I didn't understand it. And I didn't know where it came from or what the reason was. But years later, I took an advocacy course in family and domestic violence, which also makes me an advocate for victims. And I realize now that it's people who have been abused
Themselves.
who abuse others.
Right.
And the sad thing is the cycle continues because no one gets help. And there's such a stigma on this issue that even to speak about it in public, it's almost like people are kind of winking at you and pinching you and trying to get you to switch the topic because nobody wants to talk about it. And the reason nobody wants to talk about it is there's so much shame attached to domestic violence and abuse that because of the shame, nobody talks about it. And then it becomes a vicious cycle.
Right.
But if you can just peel away the shame and peel away the dirty laundry syndrome, it's not dirty laundry. Like you do not shush a victim of fire, someone who's been burnt by fire in a house fire. No one shushes them and says, "Don't talk about it." If a plane crashes and there's a survivor, no one shushes the survivor from having a conversation about what happened to them. But when it comes to family and domestic violence, and also gender violence like rape, they shush the victim.
Right.
And the longer you shush the victim, the longer the abuse continues
Right.
and nobody gets healed. So I believe that talking about it in various forms sheds light on the issue, provides information, and then prevention, and ultimately healing for the victim and also for the perpetrator.
Right.
Because I don't believe that anyone who abuses a person was born wanting to abuse people. They didn't grow up and that was their ambition to do that. But once you find that you are abusive, then you have to get help.
Sure, sure. So, at what point you said it started in like 2001? How many years into your marriage was that?
The first year,
Oh wow.
yes.
And then you said he stopped abusing you in 2013,
Physically
physically in
abusing
2013.
in 2013
So
because I made a vow
right,
that if he so much as lifts his hand and doesn't make contact, I would still say it happened and I will persecute him to the fullest extent of the law.
wow. So how did you how did that affect you mentally? Because obviously you were being abused, but you stayed in your marriage. And this is what I want you to help us understand, because sometimes for people who have not been abused, like you said, abuse comes in many different forms. But now I want to talk specifically about someone who raises their hand on you. A lot of people will say, well, why did you stay? Why did you stay that long if he was still abusing you? Help us to understand the psyche of someone who's been abused and still stays in that situation. Is it because of fear? What is it?
Okay, so I will throw that back to the people who say, why did you stay? And say to them, what did you do to make it stop? See, because the people who say, why did you stay, are the ones who are totally unavailable for the
Right.
resources that a person needs to leave.
Right.
So if you're being abused and you have children and you leave your home and you're well educated, you're well equipped to work and earn an income and have your own place, you're not going to want to go and live in a shelter. So the people who say, why did you stay? Did they open up their home for you and your children to come and stay with them for a while? Did they find empowering opportunities for you as a woman to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and be able to provide for your children? The answer is usually no.
Right.
So there are a lot of people who want to give you advice, but the support isn't there.
Right.
And to actually get a victim of abuse out of the environment and become a survivor, they need tools, they need resources. And so I applaud Lagos state government because I see that they have a domestic violence and gender violence of a ministry of sorts. And I read that one of the things that they do provide is shelter. And shelter can be provided in so many different ways. I mean, it could be a guest house
Right.
for somebody who could work in corporate and earn a living. And it's a gap opportunity for them to be able to make enough money to get their own place, as opposed to putting them in a shelter with women who have been battered and don't have the mental capacity to overcome what they have dealt with. Now, you said that how did I, what was going on in my psyche?
Yes.
I'm a Christian. And so I leaned heavily on God. And I had a lot of support from people in the church. Also, that could also be a problem because you don't leave because it says your marriage vows say for better, for worse.
Right.
And they say that, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so when the devil comes at your family, you don't flee, you fight back.
Right.
And so you do everything that you know to do to make things work. And when they still don't work, then you come up with an exit plan.
Right.
And the exit plan, I must tell you, you could use an exit plan 5 or 6 times before it finally becomes an exit.
Right.
So it's not a cookie cutter solution to this or approach to this, and everybody is grappling with the best way or the best solution or the best path to take. And remember, you don't go to school to go and learn how to deal with family and domestic violence.
Right.
So it's usually what you learn to do, you're actually taking the steps to do them as they come at you.
And you have three kids.
I have three
You have
children.
three
Yes.
children. So how did that affect the dynamic in your marriage? And did your kids know what was going on?
Okay, so I became very good at shielding my children from from exposure to it, because I was never exposed to that when I was growing up. I grew up in a very loving household. My parents were very close and loving towards each other. Never saw them fight or argue. So I was trying to shield my children from having the memory of being in a household where parents were fighting or arguing, or them seeing any abuse toward me. But in retrospect, I wish I had discussed it with them when they were much younger and told them exactly what was going on, because maybe it would have given me the brevity that I needed to exit sooner than the exit happened. And the exit was unconventional. It wasn't because of the abuse. The marriage had deteriorated to a point where it just couldn't continue. But yes, I shielded them from the abuse. And after a while, they never saw the physical, but they heard the verbal.
Right. Do you think it affected them?
Absolutely did.
In what way?
Affect them. So I can't really speak for them.
Sure.
But I've seen a manifestation in the way in conflict resolution, maybe, things that they don't talk about, and trying to use their mental capacity, as it were, to deal with situations that are way above their heads, when if they talk to somebody,
right,
it would make things actually better. So those are the things I've noticed.
Sure. So what you said was very interesting. In the beginning, you said that when you enter a room, you can spot someone who's been abused.
Absolutely.
Tell us, for people who want to know, want to help other people, what are some of those signs? What are some of the things?
Okay, so one of them is the person's voice. Like when they want to voice their opinion and their significant other is present, their body language tells you that they're seeking permission. Have a conversation that's not even personal, but maybe they don't have permission to speak about it in public or with others. There's also, I call it punishment, so to speak. So the woman could, and sometimes it could be a man.
Right.
Yes. So the woman could be, just having fun, gisting with their friends and having a good time and being uninhibited, not doing anything, that you would consider to be unusual, but you can sense that there's a look. And when she catches that look, it's like almost like someone saying, wait till we get home.
Wow. Did that ever happen to you?
Yes.
Right.
But in a different way.
Right. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So I know that you lived between America and here. And like you rightly said, things are changing in the Nigerian context now. But for many years, I think, and there is still a stigma in this country about, women. First of all, some people don't think there's anything wrong with it at all.
Right.
And then there is also a stigma, like you said, if you're being battered in your home, there's a shame that comes with it. What have you noticed in the Nigerian context that amongst, just with domestic violence, and what do you think needs to change?
I'm not sure I understand the question very well.
So in terms of the Nigerian context, like living in America, where you used to live, you know that if you are being battered, you can go to the police. You can't. Well, technically, you can. say I'm being battered, and you will probably get help. Here, I've heard of situations where people go to the police and they say, well, it's your fault that you're being battered, go home, or something like that.
Right.
And so there is no real help.
So you're talking about like the cultural
The
difference.
cultural, what is the cultural difference you notice between, obviously, you lived in the States and you experienced that when you were living in America, but now that you're back and forth and you're no longer in your marriage, but you notice that it is going on in this society.
Yes.
What have you noticed, and how do you think it needs to change in the Nigerian context?
Okay, so one of the things that takes me aback is when a woman says that she has been abused in this environment. The first question most people would ask is, what did you say or what did you do?
Right.
And I always say to them, you need to shock your system to accept that there is absolutely nothing that someone can say that should require their partner to strike them. Now, if it is self-defense, if someone wants to strike you and in trying to defend yourself, you strike the person, that's not a good cycle to be in either. However, that is better than somebody just hitting you because they didn't like what you said or a behavior, something that they wouldn't do in the workplace. Like if you had a colleague who said something that you disagree with, your first response is not to strike them. So if you can refrain from doing that in the workplace, what makes it okay for you to do it at home?
Right.
It is because you believe that somehow you'll be able to get away with doing it at home. And let me tell you this, it might be a little better in the States because you can go and report to the police. Yeah, but they get you a restraining order. And so when someone comes to attack you in public, what do? You roll up the restraining order and throw it at them. Before the police gets there, they might get away with whatever they want to do. And
Right.
I guess we both know that domestic violence is at a level where many of the people who are murdered, majority of the people who are murdered in the United States are killed by
Their
a
partners.
partner, a spouse, on a daily basis still.
Yes.
And this is 2025. So if the law is against it in America and there is a level of enforcement in America, and it is still one of the major issues that is being dealt with on a daily basis, imagine what we have to deal with here. We haven't
Sure.
even scratched the surface
Surface.
of the problem. It's the legal system is just catching up to supporting people with domestic violence claims. And we already know that even that effort is not deep enough to deal with the huge problem that we're
Sure.
talking
Sure.
about.
Wow. So we'll take a quick break. We'll continue this very important conversation with Balade when we get back. Welcome back to Real Talk with Pam. Just before the break, we were talking to Balade about family and domestic violence and its effects personally, and just how people can get help who are going through that. So Balade, let's continue the conversation. What I wanted to know is, you obviously reached a breaking point and you walked away from your marriage and broke away from the cycle, which is what a lot of people want to know, I'm sure, how you did that. What led you, what was that breaking point for you? And I guess my next question is, for people out there, like you said, men too are abused. How can they get to that point to have the courage? Some practical steps that you can help with as well.
Okay. So for me, it was getting an understanding of what it was I was going through. I knew it was wrong. I knew that it wasn't the way of life that I wanted for myself, for my children. And I just started getting educated. And like I said, I took a family and domestic violence advocacy program. in Houston, Texas. And once I understood that, it helped me go from being a victim to a survivor. And I think once you make that mental shift in your head and you're no longer somebody's victim, your behavior changes, your essence changes, your character changes. So for me, um, my first exit was actually in my mental state. So I exited that cycle of abuse by rejecting any form of abuse. So and then not tolerating it. So my no was no, my yes was yes, and I was no longer available to debate whether I was going to compromise here or there. And it became really difficult for the cycle to continue because I
Right.
was no longer participating. I explain it as, if the two boxers get in a ring and start boxing at each other, then they would continue with the fight. But when there's only one person in the ring, I refuse to get in the ring. I refuse to pick up bait. I
Right.
refuse to be gaslit. Gaslighting is one of the ways that narcissists or abusive people try to get under your skin to justify whatever it is that they feel that they need to do to put you back in order.
Right.
And so I refused to be gaslit. So the things that he would usually say that will cause me to be upset, angry, want to respond, just stop getting those responses from me. And so
Right.
I think that the house now became uncomfortable,
Right.
and he spent a lot of time outside the home doing
Right.
other things with other people, and I was okay with that. I didn't have a problem with that. I was focused on healing and and getting myself mentally stable enough to make decisions that were good for me and for my children. So the exit of the marriage was actually instigated by him.
Right.
I had tried to file for divorce several times, and he would go and see the pastor, go for counseling, ask people to get involved and things. But when I got the email from the lawyer saying that he had filed for divorce, I got a lawyer and counter petitioned, and the petition from their side said irreconcilable differences, but from my side it said abuse, physical, emotional, financial, verbal abuse, and infidelity. And I contested nothing. And so thankfully, the divorce was finalized pretty quickly. And I actually even changed my name the month that the divorce was final. And for those who need to exit an unhealthy relationship, I would say the focus isn't on the other person, it's on you. What
Right.
is it that you need to do to get mentally healthy and physically safe enough to live your life to the fullest? I believe that people need to engage other people. So you're going to need help. You're going to need support. Getting the right kind of help is very important. So you need to go to people who have knowledge about your situation. See, because if you talk to people who just do marriage counseling, now many of the people they counsel are not dealing with violent situations.
Right.
And so you need to look up domestic violence support groups in your area and let them be your first point of call. And then hopefully you meet a person. Usually they put you in contact with a counselor. And what the counselor can then help you do is come up with strategies that would enable you to exit safely
Right.
from your situation. But getting educated about what you're dealing with and the best approach to getting yourself out of the situation and getting disentangled from the situation is a clinical approach. You can't just uh, 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 do it a knee-jerk approach to this kind of situation, especially when you have children involved. You need a clinical approach. So you need to seek help from those who understand your journey and what you need to do to get out of that situation.
Right. What would you say to people, particularly in the Nigerian context, that the church knows that they're going through abuse and yet their pastors say to them, you need to stay?
Okay, so that's one of the things that I had to deal with. And
Okay.
to be honest, I would say prolonged the situation, because family and domestic violence is not something that you you approach from. It's like saying somebody needs heart surgery and they go and see the pastor.
Right.
So the pastor can say, go to the hospital. The pastor can introduce you to a heart surgeon, but the pastor cannot perform this surgery. It's the same thing. So with family and domestic violence, they can give you advice. They can point you, but you need to go and see a professional
Right.
who has been trained to deal with that situation. And so the longer you stay, the longer you look for the solution in the church that you need from professionals. I mean, everybody listens to God, and God might tell you that this is where you need to go to get your healing. And so, if you're being obedient to God and you go and you have a testimony about how that worked for you, that is great. But as a common rule, you go and seek professional help for situations that require professional attention.
That's right.
And so, if you are dealing with family and domestic violence, yes, it's fine to talk to your pastor. It's fine to go to the church for spiritual support, for mental support, but you need a clinical approach and you need to go to the professionals, those who are professionals in family and domestic violence. And there are many institutions available out there. I would say that if you come across a survivor, you might want to talk to them first before you go and sit in the church
Right.
looking for the help that you are going to get from maybe a hospital.
Sure. And just finally, has it been easy to move on with your life and start afresh?
Okay, the mental aspect of it has been very easy. Peace is a very easy place to want to be. And once you found peace in your mind, you know, the battleground in the mind is worse than the battleground in your environment. And so once I found peace in my mind, I cultivate that so that everything around me, the people around me, the people I engage with, if they're not bringing love, joy, peace, and then I added one prosperity, then I disengage. So that part has been, I wouldn't say totally easy, because letting go of some of those relationships was actually hurtful,
Right.
but it was necessary, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm at a better place. I'm lighter. I'm lighter. I move around with less baggage.
Sure.
You know, it's easy to be me. The part that has taken a while is the empowerment aspect, because with that kind of situation, there are a lot of stops and starts. And so for you to, and if you're multi-talented, it becomes very challenging to figure out which of the stops you want to start again.
Right.
So that has taken a while, but in time,
That's
everything
good.
comes
That's good.
together in time.
Yeah. Great. And I would love you to just finally speak to survivors out there, because I know that a lot of people who I've spoken to who have struggled with domestic violence, sometimes they blame themselves. They think, if I hadn't done this, then maybe I wouldn't be in this situation. Just moving forward from that.
Okay. So I will speak to victims first and then survivors. So victims of abuse, that's those who are currently in that situation. The first thing you need to believe, and I'm telling you this as someone who has experienced what you are experiencing. It is not your fault. You are not responsible. You did not bring this upon yourself. Accept that, believe that, and move from there. So once you can settle that within yourself, you are not at fault. You didn't do this. You didn't bring this upon yourself. It is not your fault. It isn't what you said. It isn't what you did. It is who that other person is. And you cannot make an adult do things that they do not want to do. So you can only work on yourself. So get the help that you need to come out of that situation, regardless of what the other person is doing, so that you can become a survivor. And once you're a survivor, let me tell you, it is a sense of responsibility. You are responsible to reach back and get somebody else out of that situation, because only you can tell somebody who is going through what you have been through what you did to get out. And so if every survivor bands together and reaches out for a victim and pulls them out of that situation, imagine what a bigger circle we would have of people who are empowered to resist and be resilient and be empowered to live better, fuller, bigger lives, and how that impacts everybody around them positively. And also, we don't wish ill on the perpetrator. We also want them to get better. And I know that there are a lot of organizations available to help with anger management, redirecting people's impulses so that what you would usually default to doing would not be what you would do, because you're learning new ways of dealing with challenging situations. So there are organizations who focus on that as well, because we do want everybody who is affected to get better, because we started with family and domestic violence. So you are family. In most cases, you've been married, you have children together, you would always be family, whether you interact with each other or not. And it is better to get to a place of positivity, peace, solace, everybody living richer, fuller lives, than to be bantering and bickering over the past.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And thank you
It's
for
been
having
great.
me.
I've learned a lot, and I know it will help so many, many people. So that's it for now. We hope this has been very helpful. Did you want to say one more
Yes,
thing?
I
Oh,
would like
please
to
go
thank
ahead.
Pam, because there are many, many situations. Actually, I had a discussion with two individuals last year. We're developing a video cast about this. We're still developing. So we are meeting and having discussions, because I call it the pandemic that gets overlooked,
Right.
because it's going on all over the world. And I traveled and came back, and we haven't resumed our discussions. But when you invited me on the show, you kind of gave me the nudge that I needed, because if you hadn't nudged me, I probably still wouldn't have said anything about it publicly. So I'm grateful for you for
Thank
giving
you
me
so much.
the
Thank you.
opportunity to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Thank you. So I hope you guys have learned a lot from this, like I have. And like Bolade said, if you are going through any domestic challenge, please reach out. Don't go on that journey on your own. Thank you for watching. Till next time. Bye for now.